Thank you, Dr. Merelin Darlong. Thanks for having given me this opportunity and the privilege to be part of this program of NLU Tripura. As I can see, the topic of the theme of this particular program is literature as a repository of Indian knowledge system, decolonizing narratives, and the quest for social justice. So what I have done, I must also admit the first place that I'm not an expert on Indian knowledge system per se. There are or ancient Indian texts. But what I shall try to share with the participants today is my limited understanding of what is decoloniality and how can we place within this framework of decoloniality the whole idea of Indian knowledge system. And also at the same time, I picked up a few interesting phrases from the theme of this particular program. One is, of course, decolonizing narratives, and the other one is the quest for social justice. Now, when I saw this particular phrase, then I thought of how we can also associate IKS or Indian knowledge system with that of the idea of social justice. So this is where these are the kind of elements and aspects that came to my mind on the basis of what I tried to develop a kind of a talk for today and to share some of my understanding and ideas with the esteemed participants. And I welcome all of you to this particular session of this program. And I have titled my talk as Delinking an Epistemic Shift, ICAS and Decoloniality. Now, as I speak, then Dr. Merelin would be shifting the slides. So first, I tried to figure out when we speak of decoloniality and IKS, we need to figure out what are the weightage, what are the kind of dimensions of these terminologies. So some of the questions we would try to evoke in our talk and try to also respond to. One could be what is decoloniality? How do we understand decoloniality? What is epistemic? And as I have used this particular word, what is delinking? Then another term is important when it comes to delinking, which is a phrase called the epistemics of the South. And of course, we also have to understand what do we understand by the term IKS, Indian knowledge system. And recently, many of you might be following the news that you might have come across that UGC has come up with LOCF, learning oriented course framework, or learning outcome based course framework, that is LOCF, and where it has extensively incorporated several elements from what we understand, so-called IKS, Indian knowledge system. Of course, in the academics, this particular initiative by the UGC has been received with mixed responses. Some of them have welcomed it. Some of them, of course, found some kind of they critically responded to this particular initiative of the UGC. So we shall come to all these things, maybe not even if not exactly, but we shall try to evoke some kind of questions among you people as well, among our participants as well, how we should rather try to understand this idea of IKS. But before understanding IKS, we may have to understand what is decoloniality, because decoloniality is a very repeatedly used term these days. We use the term quite often, decoloniality. And some of us, we use the term decoloniality maybe without going deeper into this. Some of us, we use decoloniality as a term, as a synonym of post-coloniality, as if, and so we interchangeably use this two terms, post-coloniality and decoloniality. And some of us, we use decoloniality as a kind of strategy of bringing so many non-Western or anything that is Indian elements into our curriculum and also other fields of knowledge. Now, we have to historically understand the term decoloniality, or rather critically understand the term decoloniality and it's how this particular term has evolved. Now, decoloniality is not, in fact, a random terminology in the present context. Though the word decoloniality was used by the people, like even Gandhi used the term decoloniality during the freedom movement. In the freedom movement, this particular term was used, decoloniality. But decoloniality as a theoretical idea is of relatively of recent origin. When it comes to post-coloniality, we have some amount of familiarity with the term post-coloniality as a critical terminology. Now, before, if we look at historicity of this particular term, post-coloniality, then we shall see that post-coloniality was not there before the word was, before post-coloniality, the word was Commonwealth. That was the word, Commonwealth, which comprised all the colonies of the empire. And when I say empire, that was essentially the British Empire or the Anglophone Empire. That was known as the Commonwealth. Now, Commonwealth has evolved into later. It has evolved into post-colonial. From post-colonial, also part of it became South Asia. Now, from post-colonial, now the term has evolved into global Anglophone. So this is the kind of trajectory of this term. From Commonwealth to post-coloniality, from post-coloniality to in certain region it has also become South Asia. Now, of course, it has also evolved into as a global Anglophone. So this is a new terminology which is doing the rounds. Now, decoloniality. What is decoloniality? How do we understand decoloniality? Is it another side of post-coloniality, or is it just another synonym of post-coloniality? The answer is no. Decoloniality is something different than that of post-coloniality. How is it different? Now, quite significantly, decoloniality is a movement which has made a quite significant departure from what we know as post-coloniality. Now, what kind of departure has it made? What kind of distinction has it made? One very significant distinction of decoloniality is that decoloniality is not essentially Anglophone, when post-coloniality is essentially Anglophone. That is, most of the Anglophone colonies, they comprise the territories which can be termed as the post-colonial territories. But decolonial geography is somewhat different. Decolonial geography has also the experience of coloniality, but that coloniality has a different character. Now, what kind of character that particular coloniality has? The character is that it has a slightly different history. The history is the countries which are now involved with this exercise of decolonial theoretical movement, these countries are not essentially colonized by England, but rather mostly by France or Spain. These are so from that point of view. So it has a kind of different linguistic history when it comes to colonization. So that is one very significant aspect. Then what is the territory where this decolonial movement has actually emerged? The geographical location, so as to say, of decoloniality is Latin America or South America. South America is the locale where the whole idea of decoloniality started happening as a major theoretical movement. Now, what is the difference then? Quite significantly, decoloniality is also a kind of a reaction to post-coloniality. That is that we need to understand. So, decoloniality and post-coloniality is not a kind of a terminology which are synonymous to each other or vice versa. It's not like that. So decoloniality has a different kind of historiography, different kind of historical experiences, different kind of linguistic locale. Decoloniality also has a different kind of a theoretical focus. Now, what is and when we use decoloniality in the context of IKS, we need to understand these particular realities. Now, we this particular course has also designed as in terms of decoloniality instead of post-coloniality. Now, again, the question might arise that if decoloniality has a different kind of historical experiences, if it is a part of non-Anglophone colonies, if it is part of Latin America or South America, if it is a part of the historical experiences they had in terms of Spanish and say French language, then there is a stark difference between the colonial experience of India and the colonial experience of these countries. Now, the question would be, how do we now contextualize the idea of decoloniality into our rubrics or in the context of our academia or our pedagogy? This is kind of a question that might arise. So we shall be coming to that. Now, along with decoloniality, roughly, I would say, is a movement that has theoretical movement, which started not essentially among the Anglophone colonies, but in the colonies, part of the Latin America, or say South America. But again, significantly, decolonial movement is, of course, like post-coloniality, also in a significant way, is the discourse of the South. Discourse of the South, geographically, of course, Latin America is in the South, so it is discourse of the South. But at the same time, there are some northern countries are also part of this decolonial movement. And they are also theoretically part of the global South. Which are these countries? Two very significant countries of this decolonial movement are Russia and Canada. So these are two of the significant countries which are part of this decolonial movement, and they are, despite the fact that both Canada and Russia are part of the geographic north, but they are part of the discursive south. So both Canada and Russia, they are part of these decolonial rubrics, and they form what can be said that the decolonial geography or decolonial discursive geography. In a way, they are in that sense part of the global south. Now I'm coming to another term, that is epistemic, which is one of the key terminologies in the decolonial theoretical rubrics. Now, epistemic, of course, this term essentially means the process of producing knowledge. This is one very core area of focus for the decolonial thinkers. Now, they have identified that entire process of coloniality is essentially predicated upon the ecosystem of epistemology. So that is what they have identified, that entire knowledge system is controlled by the mechanisms and apparatuses of colonialism. And that is why one very significant area of focus is epistemology or epistemic. Now, what is then decolonial ambition or decolonial agenda? Decoloniality has a kind of a discursive agenda. The agenda is to delink. This is a key terminology of decoloniality. That it is not only about protesting, it is not only about resistance, but rather it is all about delinking. The delink from where? Where does it propose to have that delinkages? And the proposal is to delink from the epistemic domain. So one of the central agenda or central exercise, or we can say one of the central ambitions of decoloniality is to go for epistemic delinking. That's what one of the central agenda of decoloniality. And what kind of epistemology? Epistemology of the West. And when it comes to epistemology of the West, it also epistemology of the, quite significantly, modernism. Because decoloniality says or understands modernism as the other side of coloniality, or colonialism is the other side of modernism. So colonialism and modernism, they can be flipped from one side to another. Without coloniality, there would not be modernism. Without modernism, there cannot be colonialism. That's what the understanding of decolonial thinkers about the whole idea of modernism is. So modernism, they understand, is a product of colonialism. And modernism is one of the major evolutions of these epistemic interventions, the colonial epistemic interventions. And in order to achieve the decolonial agenda, in decolonial objectives, one of the central exercise or central acts has to be delinking. That's what their argument is. Now, if there is a delinking from that particular epistemology, which is epistemology of the West, which is the epistemology of modernism, which is the epistemology of the locale, which is associated with the knowledge, then what alternative do we have? Or what alternative decoloniality can offer? The decoloniality offers the epistemics of the South. That is the term. So the alternative, they've also come up with an alternative. The alternative is the epistemics of the South. So far, the coloniality is predicated upon the epistemology of the epistemics of the North, and decoloniality is predicated upon the epistemics of the South. That is a key terminology. And what is epistemic of the South? What is South? What is the meaning of South? Is South just a geographic direction? The answer is no. South is a loaded terminology. South means not only which is a kind of direction, which is below, which is not north, which is on the southern part of the globe, but South also has many other meanings. What are the meanings? Some of the meanings are: South means the locale of the subaltern. South means the locale of the silenced. South means the locale of the underrepresented. South means the locale which has not been given a kind of proper due, proper positions. That is what South is all about. So South is not just a geographic location. South is a kind of ideological location. The location which is a kind of silent location, that is the South. And quite paradoxically, the proposal is that from that silent location, epistemics is to evolve. That is, a silent location is capable of producing epistemology, and that is going to replace the epistemology of the North. That is one of the major decolonial agenda. And within this particular framework, we perhaps can place the whole idea of IKS, Indian Knowledge System. Now, with the term IKS, I would also like to problematize the term IKS, this acronym IKS. When we expand the term IKS, what should be the expansion of these particular three letters, IKS? Apparently, this is Indian Knowledge System, but is it only Indian knowledge system? Can we also expand this, or can we look for an alternative expansion of this acronym? What would be the alternative expansion of this acronym apart from Indian knowledge system? The alternative expansion of the acronym can be, of course, I'm sure all of you might be thinking at the moment, is Indigenous Knowledge System, IKS. One is, of course, Indian knowledge system. We can also legitimately claim IKS can also mean, or it has the capacity to mean, which can be termed as indigenous knowledge system. When I say Indian knowledge system and indigenous knowledge system, it might apparently look all the same, but there are certain subtle differences between the two. We shall also try to problematize these particular ideas, how when ICAS is Indian knowledge system and ICAS has indigenous knowledge system. And between the two, which is a legitimate claimant for the term IKS? Is it Indian knowledge system or indigenous knowledge system? And I shall leave this particular question to the floor for you people to decide, as maybe when we come to discussions, we can bring these issues more elaborately. Now coming to the next issues, let me see. Yeah. Okay. From there, we're coming to this is a significant essay. What is delinking? I have just given it so that all of you can be aware of this essay. This is by Walter Minolo, who is one of the major figures in the realm of decolonial studies, and he has, in fact, though it is not his term, but he is responsible in popularizing the term delinking in the context of decoloniality. So this is this title there is quite significant, which is quite reflective of what I have been speaking so far. That is the rhetoric of modernity, the logic of coloniality, and the grammar of decoloniality. Okay? So rhetoric of modernity is the logic of coloniality, and the alternative is they're looking for the grammar of decoloniality. That is the proposition he has made in this essay. It's a very long essay, but one of the seminal essays. So I'm sure some of you who might be interested can look for this essay, which is available. Next, what are the issues that we might look at? The issues are ICAS, as I have said. What is ICAS? Is it only Indian knowledge system or indigenous knowledge system? With these are the two terms I have just expanded here. Then there is another term. This is a significant, interesting term that is called Indio Parmitido. This is a Spanish word. Indio Parmitido. Indio Parmitido means that this is related to indigeneity or indigenous knowledge system, that indigenous people can go this far, not farther. Okay, you have permission to this far, not farther. If you are indigenous, then you are permitted to this thing, that thing, this thing, and that's it. You cannot go beyond. Secondly, if you are indigenous, then what you can do, you can make some kind of rearrangements and try to be like what we want you to be. You are permitted to do this, which means if you are an indigenous, you are not entirely a sovereign entity. You have some kind of limitations and restrictions. You are recognized as indigenous, all right, but you have a paramitido. You have certain restrictions imposed upon you. You can act within those limitations. This is one of the key paradoxes of the indigenous people, not only say in our context. This is the kind of paradox all across the globe. So this is one of the things that the indigenous people will have to come out of, which is, though it sounds easy, but it's quite difficult to accomplish in real life. So this particular idea one has to be somewhat familiar with, that is Indio Parmitido, that you are permitted to this far, you can go this far, not farther. Okay, that is one of the major restrictions imposed upon the indigenous. Now, when it comes to the Indian knowledge system, that this another kind of thing is that what kind of text are we going to open up? How are we going to deal with these texts? Okay, and what is the reason? What is the justifications, or what is the purpose of incorporating those texts within this particular curriculum framework of what we call IKS? Now, if you look at the LOCF curriculum, also recent UGC curriculum, then you shall see that many texts are there which you are familiar with. Maybe there is for commerce they have incorporated. They have given the text called Arthashastra. Then they have for medical, I think they have given Shudraka, and then almost for all this for chemistry also they have given some other similar kind of text they have given. Now, then almost whatever the discipline are there, for every discipline they have introduced texts, including, of course, Savarkar also. Savarkar's text also they have incorporated as part of this LOCF. Now, the question is, like many of you might be aware that the other day one of our ministers went to a small school, then asked who was the first person to have gone to the space. The young kids had answered Neil Armstrong. Okay, that answer was actually wrong. So he said no, it's not Neil Armstrong. The actual person who had gone to the space was Yuri Gagarin of Russia. But he did not answer that also, as he did not correct the students with that answer. He said the first person went to the space was Hanuman. Okay. Now this is what he said. Actually, he's perhaps tried to justify that particular answer to that particular question by incorporating by saying that he is bringing in the Indian ICAS into the domain of science. Now, since he is saying it is Hanuman, perhaps he is saying it is Hanuman who might have gone to this space for the first time. Imagine if similar kind of objective might have had in case of a person from Yemen. Okay, and what would be his answer? The who went first, or who had invented? Now we know that who had invented aeroplane. The most of us nowadays they say that this aeroplane was invented in India because we had Pushpagrap and Garuda, that kind of thing we had. And if somebody from Yemen had to face similar kind of a situation, what would be his answer to that? He would say, no, it is not Pushpagrath. The first aircraft was a carpet, because in Arabian Nights we can see this Simbad was flying on a kind of carpet. So if that is the answer. Now the question is, whose answer is right? The Indian's answer is right, or the answer given by the Yemeni? Whose answer is right? From their perspective, if we reduce ICAS to that level, then both of them are right. And the wrong would be that aircraft was invented by the Wright brothers would be wrong. That is the paradox of how we situate knowledge. Okay, and what kind of understanding, what kind of theoretical understanding we can assign to this particular exercise of pedagogy. Okay, I'm coming to that now. That's why another term is I have also put here is a frozen text. How do we look at the texts? Should we reopen the text, or we should keep the text as frozen? And if it is frozen, what it becomes? It becomes a text, or it becomes an information? This is another question I would also like to throw into the flow. Like, for example, if we bring in some ancient text as part of the IKS, and we say that we have to just read whatever is written there, we cannot question this text, nor can we reanalyze or reinterpret this particular text, or we cannot bring in any other critical dimension to this text. Then this text is a frozen text. Can knowledge proceed further with frozen text? That is another kind of question we need to ask in the context of IKS. Like, for example, if somebody brings in the text from Ayurveda, text from, say, Shudraka, text, similar kind of text, and if that the Ayurveda says that this particular ailment can be cured by this particular herb, okay? And is there any scope of making a question, interrogating that particular claim to that text, okay? If yes, this opens up, it might be wrong also. If some questions are there, if it is verified, if it is put to similar kind of rigor of scientific experimentations and other form of experiments, that particular claim might turn out to be wrong also. Okay, so at the same time, this is one way of doing responding to that particular claim. or it might be even turn out to be the correct one. But the thing is it allowed to go for that kind of exercise of rigor? Is that particular claim is open to that kind of rigor, whether it should be done or not, or if not, then that particular claim remains a frozen claim. If it's a frozen claim, one cannot go any further. It remains there only. Neither can you take it nor can you leave it, because you cannot do anything with that particular claim. So with the frozen texts, can knowledge proceed further? That is the kind of question we need to ask. Now, this frigidity of text is what, if somebody questions a text, questions a claim made in an ancient text, or questions so-called ancient wisdom, then how this ICAS within this ecosystem of ICAS, that particular text can be placed. What would be the kind of placement of that text? Has any text, say for example, if in Upanishad, any kind of a text we bring in, and is that text open for, say, reinterpretations, or it is recalcitrant to any other interpretations apart from what it stands for? This is what is another kind of a question. Now I'm coming to another. I'll just throwing some ideas to these learned participants. Another is terra nullius. This is also interesting when it comes to the indigenous knowledge system. What is terra nullius? Is that it terra nullius literally means there's a myth of, they call it the myth of terra nullius. It says it is nobody's land. I'm just bringing the land metaphor here. Terra nullius means it is nobody's land. Why this particular myth is important here is that normally, whenever indigenous would claim anything for their own, then we would say that one major claim they make is that their land, it is our land, and there is always a kind of process of neutralizing that particular claim by bringing in the myth of terra nullius. Myth of terra nullius means this is actually nobody's land. Even the indigenous cannot claim ownership of that particular land. And once you cannot claim ownership of that particular land, anybody is legitimate to occupy that land. Now, this I'm just bringing in this land metaphor. This also is applicable in the context of epistemics or epistemology. That is, the knowledge of the indigenous can also be appropriated by the settlers and by the other forces. It can be appropriated, which is another kind of a challenge that decoloniality, in fact, tries to address. Now, with that, this terra nullia frozen text and the knowledge appropriation, indigenous knowledge system is interlinked. Now, why I'm ending this particular slide with indigenous knowledge system? Because indigenous knowledge system, if you shorten this, it also becomes IKS. So now, does IKS address these issues? This is, or should IKS also address these issues? This is what another kind of question or issue we might raise. Okay. Now we're coming to quick. This is a kind of quick list I'm just giving the people who are associated with the decolonial movement. This Ngugi Thiong'o, then Walter Minola. Merelin, you can give me the next slide there. Yeah, Frantz Fanon, Leon Batasamosaka Simpson. These are some of the names which I just wanted to make up.
A student is operating. I'm just connecting, sir. Just a minute.
Merelin, my talk runs for up to 8, then with it up to 8:30, right? How long the talk is? session?
Sir, this is up to 8:10. You can continue with the lecture for 20 minutes. Maybe we can keep for Q&A session. It depends in between. If you want to interact, you can.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Here's an answer. I'm so sorry. One second.
No problem. No, yeah, I can also start interacting with my participants meanwhile. So I think so far I have been able to share some of our understanding, which you might have been able to pick up. Am I right? Or if you have any kind of queries for these issues, you can always raise. It's not moving. It's okay. Even if it doesn't move, then I can still keep on telling. Is that okay, Marilyn? Should I go that way?
Yes, sir, you please proceed, sir. We are changing at the in a
Yeah,
second. You
whenever you
can
can
proceed maybe
talk.
with the next topic. Yeah.
Okay, now again, what does decoloniality? Because I'm focusing on this idea of decoloniality. What does decoloniality aim to resist? What kind of points of resistance, and how does it understand the whole notion of colonial epistemology, colonial knowledge system? There is one decolonial thinker. He is Anibal Villano. Now, he is a Peruvian sociologist. He has come up with the idea or an understanding that colonial knowledge is exclusionary. At the same time, this is this propagates totality. That is what his understanding of colonial knowledge system. When it if colonial whenever colonial knowledge system propagates, it propagates with this sense of totality and also a mechanism of exclusion. Now, since colonialism also bring in the idea of modernity, so they also understand modernity as a that modern rationality, for that matter, is is a process of defending exclusions. That's what colonial or this understanding of colonial knowledge is all about. So, what decolonial thinkers argue, or what decolonial thinkers aim at, that they have to break down this particular domain of colonial knowledge system, which is predicated upon totality. So totality is one of the major characteristics of colonial knowledge system. Now, how does totality evolve? From which is the source of that totality? What does totality mean? Totality means totality of meaning. That is, there is only one particular meaning, and it excludes all other possibilities of meaning. That is what the colonial notions of understanding, and which is also they understand that there's also one of the characteristics of colonization infused modernity. Now, what is the source of then this particular knowledge which has propagated this idea of totality? The source of this particular colonial knowledge is, they said, this is theological and egological knowledge. These two are the key terminologies Guiano has actually evolved. That is, colonial knowledge in a significant way is a knowledge of totality. And it is a knowledge of totality because it comes from the source of theology and ecology. What is theology and ecology? That's what we would try to understand. Now, whole idea of coloniality has evolved in a very significant way, having it's one of its major source in terms of this Western discourses, Western colonial discourses. One of the major foundations is their theology or even Christianity in colonial term. So the whole idea of colonial knowledge has its foundation in theology, that is theology in this context will be Christianity, and also egology, that is, only the whites have these competence or have the warrant to produce knowledge. So now colonial knowledge has its own limitations. What is the major limitation? That it essentially emanates from a theological sources, and secondly, it also emanates from the ecology, which is essentially European white. These are the two foundational sources for the colonial knowledge, and the colonial agenda is to break away from these two major sources of knowledge. And decoloniality has actually identified these two sources as the key sources of colonial epistemology. Now, if we have to decolonize knowledge, when you speak about decoloniality of knowledge, if we have to decolonize knowledge, then what we have to do is that we have to make knowledge come out of this particular domain of theology and egology. Egology. Now, decolonial knowledge cannot be replaced by just an alternative, just a kind of another side of theology and another side of egology. This is a major challenge for decolonial knowledge paradigm. The challenge is that because earlier when Curtison, some of you are from law and some of you are from political science also would know that there's a Curtison formulation about the self, that is I think, therefore I am. So many of you know this, okay? And who can think? Only the European white could think, and he is the one who can produce knowledge. Now, decolonial knowledge will have to look for other sides of knowledge productions. But while doing that, it cannot be another theology and another egology. That is quite that is an important parameter for decolonial knowledge to evolve. Okay. Now, what is now? Supposing when we speak about decoloniality, IKS, in the context of decoloniality, we just cannot think of another set of theology and another set of egology. We cannot set another religion, for that matter, to be the source of knowledge, or another class of people to be the individuals who are capable of producing knowledge. Earlier, it was, say, for example, within the colonial framework, Christianity from the West was the major foundation for knowledge, morality, ethics. Secondly, only the white male or white European whites, they were the source of knowledge. Earlier, that was the kind of paradigm of knowledge or parameters of knowledge. Now, that if we have to decolonize knowledge, that does not mean that we have to just look for another theology and another egology. Then this will not be the decolonizing of knowledge, nor it can be decolonizing the IKS. That is one very significant factor we need to keep in mind. Okay. Yes, the slide is moving. We can go down. Coming to, I think, slide number 11.
Sir, are we
Can
in
I
the
go?
right slide?
No,
Should we?
yeah. You can come down to slide number 10, maybe?
10. Ishan, change to slide number 10.
I can keep down. I'll stop. No, go up. No. Not down,
Back.
up. Little.
Okay.
Yeah, back. Yeah, there you can stop it here. Or you go one slide back. Yeah, these are the words I was using: theology and egology. This is, which is supposed to be the Western epistemic totality. That includes theology and egology. I have said what is theology and egology of knowledge, the politics of knowledge. So earlier, the colonial politics of knowledge is associated with theology and egological politics of knowledge. And this is also, when I say egology, like I think, therefore I am, that is the Cartesian formulation of man. Only one kind of man could think. The man who cannot think cannot produce knowledge. And within this framework, I think, therefore, I am. Perhaps what we can always include a white male from the West as the individual who is capable of thinking and he is capable of being because he is I am and he can think. But perhaps we cannot place, say, a person from deep south in Africa or even Latin America, and because he is not qualified to even think, or even his thinking is not considered to be thought, and therefore he is not even a being. So that is the kind of ecological and theological formulation of knowledge, which is essentially exclusionary. It excludes so many other realities, so many other possibilities of knowledge productions. Now, the why I'm bringing in this, because I guess should not be another formulation of another side of ecology and theology. It has to come out of both theological and ecological politics of knowledge and formulation of knowledge. Then what it should be, how it can really evolve. We're coming to the next slide. If you can move. Yeah, the analytic. Yes. This is one major decolonial objective. That is, one is that they have from given two. One is analytic, the other is programmatic. What is analytic? Concept of coloniality. What is its objective? The analytic, when you go for analytic approach to the colonial knowledge, your agenda as a kind of colonial intervention is for reconstruction and restitution of the silenced. That is one major decolonial objective, or you can say decolonial agenda of producing knowledge. And what is restitution of silenced? That is the reconstruction and the restitution of silenced histories, repressed subjectivities, subalternized knowledge. All this should be reconstructed and restituted. All this elements which have so far been silenced histories. We did not hear that history. Repressed subjectivities. The individuals were absolutely repressed epistemic who have been subjected to epistemic repressions. These subjectivities and subalternalized knowledge which is absolutely peripheral, knowledge absolutely marginalized, knowledge which is not even considered as knowledge. All these aspects are to be restituted. All these aspects to be restored. And that is what the analytical approach to the colonial knowledge system, colonial knowledge paradigm, and that is one of the major objectives and exercises of decolonial knowledge politics. And if we associate ICAS within this framework of decoloniality, then ICAS should also be capable of engaging with this analytical approach to colonial knowledge, and which would mean it should also be capable of restoring the silenced histories, the repressed subjectivities, and subalternalized knowledge. Knowledge which is already dominant, mere replacing that knowledge will not be enough for bringing ICAS as a framework of decolonial knowledge. So that is what our argument is. We're coming to the next slide. That is, okay. One is non-Western totality and imperial totality. There are two. Totality may not necessarily be a colonial experience. It can also be neo-colonial too. Now, totality, as I have said earlier, that colonial knowledge is totalitarian, or colonial knowledge is predicated upon totality. Now, when you repress that colonial knowledge and you say that we are going for a decolonial exercise of getting rid of colonial knowledge, while doing that, you cannot, or we should not rather, repress colonial knowledge of totality with another form of totality. So that would be neo-colonial totality. So this will not be actual decolonial knowledge shift. This will not be a proper delinking. When we have to delink, we delink with the totality of knowledge which is being perpetrated or propagated by the colonial knowledge paradigm. So I guess if we have to really bring in ICAS as a kind of decolonial knowledge paradigm, then it cannot become a kind of neo-colonial paradigm also, because it cannot bring in one totality cannot be replaced by another totality. It be a continuation of colonialism in new form, so it's neo-colonial continuation, not decolonial. If not totality, then what is the thing that decolonial knowledge paradigm can look for? That is as I had said earlier, one is programmatic and this is analytic. This is programmatic. The programmatic essentially, analytic is essentially is going for restitution, and programmatic is delinking, which is called desprendimiento or detachment. Detachment from the earlier knowledge paradigm. So that is what and detachment is also another word is delinking. That's part of the knowledge paradigm. Now we're coming to the next slide. Now, if we detach, we're coming to the next slide. Yeah. Then, when we detach, what do we come across, and what do we bring in? We can come to the next slide. Here we can bring in. We look for the alternative paradigms within that decolonial academic paradigm. Can you shift? Can you move the slide, Merelin? Yeah, maybe meanwhile, when the try, what
Ishan,
are the kind of
change the slide. Sir, what I'll do, just give us a moment. In the meantime, you can, yeah. Ishan, you stop sharing from your end. I'm going to share from my side. Okay. Do that. Just a minute, sir. Moment. Sorry for the little interruption.
how much time do I have, Merelin?
Sir, we have another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Is the slide
Including,
visible?
yeah, it is.
Which one? This slide, sir?
So yeah, this is the one.
Okay. So 15, you can take up to 8:10, 8:15, you can carry on with the lecture. Then
And then our interaction after that.
yeah.
Okay, it's fine. Maybe I'll try to finish earlier if I can. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, this is the one. So here are some of the terminologies of decoloniality quite closer to the whole idea of decoloniality. One is, of course, indigenous ontology. Why I'm stressing on indigeneity? Because when it comes to IKS, as I've said, the IKS can also be alternately understood as indigenous knowledge system. If it has to evolve as an indigenous knowledge system, what should it bring in? What kind of elements it need to bring in within the framework of IKS? Within the framework of IKS, one very major thing that it needs to bring in is indigenous ontology. Now, ontology, when it comes to ontology or understanding or knowledge paradigm, so far indigenous ontology was not even considered as an ontology, because as I had said, indigenous was not even considered to be a site of knowledge or a kind of source of knowledge. Indigenous was not considered as a kind of source of egology, ego. Now, indigenous ontology is an aspect that ICAS as a decolonial knowledge paradigm have to bring in. Then with that, it has to bring in indigenous wisdom, indigenous or cultural texts. When I say ICAS texts, we can see only one kind of texts, the part of the ICAS curriculum, but can it also incorporate the cultural texts of the indigenous? That is one significant you can say exercise it has to accomplish. But mere bringing text is not enough. With the text, it also has to bring in the indigenous values. Because if ICAS wants to propagate a particular kind of values, the indigenous text also brings in its own values, indigenous values. The indigenous values will have to be brought into the rubric of the whole decolonial politics of knowledge, new knowledge paradigm. And with that values, it also has to bring in social practices. It has to legitimize the social practices of the indigenous. Because as I had said earlier, indigenous are seen as a kind of indio permitido, that you are permitted to this and this, not this and that. Okay? If that is what happens, then whole ICAS movement might falter, because this will be another form of colonization, another form of coloniality, so as to say. So their social practices, their food habits, and many other things should also become legitimate part of this IKS curriculum. So this will be, in fact, if that we can accomplish, then we can say this is a real kind of decolonial exercise happened in case of IKS interventions into our curriculum. Okay. Now I'm going to the next slide. IKS as tools of social justice, because social justice is one of the major phrases of today's program. Okay. ICAS as tools of social justice. I just have mentioned here three names. Yeah, many of you are familiar with the three names. If social justice has to be part of ICAS, then there has to be rereading of texts. If social justice has to be part of the ICAS, then certain silent figures should be allowed to speak. Because if we have to ensure justice, the individual and subjects must have the capacity to articulate. So they should be allowed to articulate. Now, I'm just giving some examples. Who are the individuals who should be allowed to speak instead of remain eternally silent? One is Shurpanakha, Ekalabha, or Sambuk. Okay, you know the story of Shurpanakha, whose nose was cut by Lakshman. Ekalabha, all of us we know, whose thumb was cut by this guru of the Pandavas, Dronacharya, and Sambuk we know, who was killed as a kind of penance because he studied. And when he was killed, then there was a part with the manner. Then only it says that there was no death occurred in the village, because he was an Adivasi Sambuk who had studied. Because he had studied, a great catastrophe occurred. Okay, and that's why Sambuk was killed. So this, I'm just giving that some kind of examples. Now, can these figures be allowed to speak out in order to ascertain social justice through the IKS texts? That is another very challenging task that IKS need to address. And when it can be done, only then perhaps we can think of decolonial curriculum being introduced within the framework of our pedagogy as part of this decolonial intervention. Okay. Now I'm coming to the next slide. Now, why I have taken out these particular names, because these characters, Seshulpanakha, Ekalabha, Shambhug, they have remained silent in our Indian texts. Why? They have remained silent because they have not been considered even to be beings. I am, I think, therefore I am. So that particular qualification was not assigned to these characters, as if neither can they think nor are they beings. They are not even beings. Okay. So since they cannot think, they are not even beings, they cannot have any epistemic privilege. This I'm just using these examples metaphorically. So the colonized do not have epistemic privileges, because even in that kind of text, or when it comes to the knowledge in the context of colonization, the colonizers are not supposed to have any kind of epistemology of their own. They cannot have their epistemic privileges. Okay. Then who has that epistemic privilege? Who can speak up? Who can actually give us values? Who can give us the ethics? Only the colonizers. The one who controls. Now, within this kind of a dynamics, ICAS has another kind of a role to play, that is, should relocate itself among the repressed. That is, the ones who has remained silent so far, one who could not articulate, one who never given a kind of warrant to speak out. The ICAS, if ICAS has to become a kind of a decolonial curriculum paradigm, it has to be able to assign the voice to the repressed, even within its own texts. That is what ICAS needs to do. We're coming to almost finishing this. Yes. Then how decolonial knowledge system operates. What is the difference between decolonial knowledge system and the colonial knowledge system? One significant difference between the two is that the colonial knowledge system is an imposed knowledge system. It is imposed. And decolonial knowledge system is not imposed. It is inherited knowledge system. These are two basic differences between the two. So decoloniality then means working toward a vision of human life that is not dependent upon the structure by the forced imposition of one ideal of society over those that differ. That is, one particular idea was imposed upon the one who actually differ from that particular idea. Or for that example, one idea cannot be a kind of blanket idea to be applied on everybody. So within that decolonial framework, if I impose my idea upon you, this is what the knowledge, this is what the paradigm, this is what epistemology, if I say this thing, that becomes a kind of the colonial framework of imposing knowledge. And this is what was done by modernity. This is what was done by coloniality. Okay. So knowledge has to be in such a manner be available to the individual, which is not an imposition, but the knowledge should come to them as a kind of realization of being inheritance. That is what the decolonial knowledge is all about. And that is why when an indigenous goes to the field, to the land, when indigenous learns so many things from the land itself, this is an inheritance of knowledge. Nobody has to tell him what he should do with the crop, what he should do with the land. He inherits it almost a kind of by seeing it, by being a part of that. That is what the colonial knowledge paradigm is. And that is also what the indigenous knowledge paradigm is all about. And I guess as the colonial knowledge paradigm will have to evolve as a knowledge paradigm which is inherited rather than being imposed. And if it has to be done like that, then ICAS will have to be pluriversal. It cannot be only universal, but pluriversal. So many things it has to incorporate. I'm coming to that. This we can, the next slide we can skip and come to the other one. Yeah, so yeah, we can skip this, yes. So delinking means to change the terms of the conversation. And above all, the hegemony of ideas of what knowledge and understanding are, and consequently, what economy and politics, ethics, philosophy. So this is basically what it says, that delinking means the change, the terms of the conversation. So delinking means we're not changing the way we speak, not the way we used to speak within the colonial framework. Coming to the next one. Delinking also means it is necessary to fracture the hegemony of knowledge. This is delinking. Okay. This is slide number 20. Yeah. So this is
This one, sir?
yeah, right. Perfect. So now delinking is also means fracturing from the hegemony of knowledge. So knowledge should not be hegemonic. This is what knowledge should be. Now, delinking from, as I have said earlier, from theology and ecological politics of knowledge. So ICAS should also afford to delink itself theological and ecological politics of knowledge. Then we're coming to the next slide, that is slide number 22. Yeah. So delinking means to change the terms and not just the content of the conversation. So this is delinking. That is, one strategy of delinking is to denaturalize concepts and conceptual fields that totalize a reality. Okay. That is, which is a crucial idea here. When it comes to delinking means one has to delink from that particular reality and paradigm which is considered a reality, which is considered this is the reality. From that particular reality, knowledge has to shift itself, delink itself. That's what it speaks about. Now, if theology and ecology is not the site of knowledge, then what are the site of knowledge? We're coming to this quickly. I'm also looking at the time. Yeah. These two terms are very important so far as the decoloniality of knowledge is concerned. That is, geo and body politics of knowledge. Geo and body politics of knowledge. That is, decoloniality is about relocating knowledge paradigms. Decoloniality is about shifting the site of epistemology. What is that? What is the new site? That is, from the west, it comes to the south, that is the geo. From the white male, it comes to the indigenous, that is the body. And this is the larger understanding. And at the macro level, from west, from Europe, knowledge can shift to other locales as well. Other locales can also be equally legitimate sites of knowledge production. It could be the global south entirely. It could be a small village. It could be a small tribal locality. That can also be a site of legitimate site of knowledge. The body, so far only the white male used to be the body of knowledge, from where knowledge is to come. Now, one individual from the global south can also be a kind of source of knowledge, but he can also be considered as a kind of, he also thinks and he is. Earlier, in the context of Descartes, only I think, therefore I am, it is essentially, it needs to mean only the Europeans. Now, that body and geography now shifts to the global south. So the theo and geopolitics of knowledge is located in the domain of the empire rather than in the sphere of the colonies. So now it has, from the empire, it shifts to the colonies. We're coming to the next. This is the epistemic geopolitics implies a decolonial shift, both epistemic geopolitics and epistemic body politics. This is one of the major decolonial shift or decolonial linkages. Now, it also speaks about de-assimilation, which is again associated with indigeneity. The delinking is the reverse of assimilation. Assimilation is a word which you normally associate to be a positive word, but assimilation is what only weaker or who has been weakened are asked to assimilate with the larger body or the stronger one. That is the process of assimilation. A bigger cultural group would say that to the weaker cultural group that you assimilate with us. The bigger cultural group would not say that let us assimilate with the weaker one. They would not say that. So when a weaker is asked to assimilate, that means one thing, that the weaker section does not belong to what they are supposed to assimilate with. This is one major major objectives of delinking. That delinking is against assimilation. It doesn't propagate assimilation. It actually recognizes the politics of assimilation. Assimilation is only a virtue of the powerful, of the stronger, imposed upon the weaker, or who has now been weakened. And it's a larger body would always ask the smaller bodies to assimilate instead of the other way around. So this is when the other way around happens, reverse happens, this is delinking. And this is what decoloniality. Now, when we also propagate ICAS, instead of having a kind of politics of assimilative politics, it should go for delinking politics. That is, it should be able to delink with its own paradigms in certain respect or in certain locations. Now, what assimilation gives is fancy unique or mainstream conformists. That is what the decolonial paradigms recognizes or identifies fancy, unique, or the mainstream conformists. That is, whatever is the mainstream, there are many of them, they would conform with it. Okay, this is good. This value is the right. Yeah, because this is the mainstream value, this is the majority value. And this kind of individuals, groups, and ideas are called as fancy, unique, or mainstream conformists. The idea of decolonial knowledge is to disempower or disfigure these fancy, unique, mainstream conformists. And this decolonial knowledge is all about non-totalitarian concept of totality. And which is non-totalitarian concept of totality is pluriversality. That is one of the key terminologies of decolonial knowledge. In decolonial knowledge, it propagates pluriversality, not universality. That is not there's not only one kind of knowledge, there is many kind of knowledge, pluriversal knowledge. There's not only one reality, but there's pluriversal reality. That is what decolonial knowledge propagates. And so, even I guess, in that sense, in order to become a decolonial knowledge, or in order to establish decoloniality within this knowledge paradigm, will have to be a paradigm of pluriversal knowledge system, or a pluriversal part of the pluriversal knowledge paradigm. So, I'm just going down. Pluriversal, you can come to slide number 29. Yeah, I'll be finishing quickly. So delinking presupposes a move towards geo and body politics of knowledge. I'm just concluding. And delinking is also understood as a decolonial epistemic shift, leading other universality, that is to pluriversality as a universal project. So pluriversality is the paradox. Universal project is pluriversality. That is the universal project. This is the project of delinking. There's pluriversality as a universal project. And delinking also presupposes a shift towards geo and body politics of knowledge. Geo means the location, and individuals are different in decolonial knowledge paradigm. So who will produce IKS? The one who has so far been producing Theo and Ego, then this will not be decolonial knowledge. It will rather be a kind of continuation of the earlier form of colonial knowledge. Coming to the next one. Now, as I've said, epistemology of the South. I'll quickly say this one. Boaventura de Sousa Santos. He has written a very significant book, his The End of Cognitive Empire. In the very first paragraph, he defines what is the epistemology of the South. Okay, I'll quickly read this one. The epistemologies, or this knowledge system of the South, concern the production and validation of knowledge anchored in the experiences of resistance of all those social groups that have systematically suffered injustice, oppression, and destruction caused by capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchy. When we speak about social justice in the narratives, then whose narratives we can bring as an exercise of social justice? Here, Santos says that we have to bring the narratives of the oppressed. The narratives who were not allowed a representation. And we have to bring in the narrative that speaks about resistance. That is what we have to bring in. And what narrative is called, what is kind of narrative is this? This he defines as the narrative of the South, or the epistemologies of the South. Okay. And what kind of, coming to the next slide, that is, okay, here it says the epistemologies of the South concern the knowledges that emerge from where? How this knowledge comes, from where it comes, what is the site? The site, it says, it comes from social and political struggles and cannot be separated from such struggles. So knowledge that knowledge comes from social and political struggle, that is epistemologies of the South. They are not therefore epistemologies in the conventional sense of the word. It may not be epistemologies in this conventional sense of the word, because it is epistemologies of the South, which is the part of the decolonial knowledge. Now, in that sense, so-called non-knowledge might also become a knowledge. So the aim of this particular knowledge of the South is to identify and valorize that which often does not even appear as knowledge in the light of the dominant epistemologies. So epistemologies of the South necessarily involve other ontologies. Here also it speaks about, in a way, the universality. So this is what I wanted to speak about, what is decoloniality and what perhaps our understanding of social justice to bring in within the framework of IKS, and how decoloniality operates through the processes of delinking, and what is the politics of epistemology, what are the sites of knowledge, and how from ego and theological politics of knowledge, knowledge has shifted or should shift to the geo and body politics of knowledge. With that, I end my session. Thanks to all of you. I've ended with Kublai Shibun, which is in Kasi called "Thank you so much." Okay. All right. Over to Mary.
So, thank you. I think it should come a big thank you from us, we as participants here. And it just made me realize that this is the reason that we required such FDPs, so that we get, such kind of insights, enlightenment. Um, I think all the participants will agree with me. It was so intense and engaging the whole session, and I was little annoyed in between, to be honest, because the slide was not moving.
It's like
And
that.
just to confess, the student who was supposed to coordinate, he had fallen asleep. He had the whole class today, so
It's done
sorry
that.
for that inconvenience. So, sir, we'll quickly take now queries. We have a few questions already from the chat box
Uh,
Yeah.
Merlin, can
for
I go
10
first? Because
participants.
I have another engagement, please.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Paramita Dasgupta, sir. I'm really overwhelmed. It was a fascinating, fabulous session, but it was
Thank you.
quite dense and intense because you packed in a lot of stuff in this. And Merlin, this is my request to you that this recording, if it can be shared with us, because there's a
Sure.
lot to learn, lot to learn.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So I
Paramita.
have a few things cross my mind while you were presenting. So first thing is that we are all aware of the famous article by Professor Partha Chatterjee on their modernity and our modernity.
Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned this term modernity while talking about decoloniality, delinking, etc. Now, sir, we are still living in a world where we need validation from the West. Whether, yeah, we can't disagree on. So, how do we reestablish our modernity, or do we have to call it modernity in that sense for anything that comes in the context of indigenous or Indian knowledge system? That is one thing. The other thing is Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak's famous essay, "Can the Subaltern Speak?" She
Yeah.
raised that question long time ago, even before IKS became such a big hype. Sir, what is the new thing that we can establish if we bring in Ekalavya or Supanaka and to try to give them a voice? Uh, and the other thing is that, sir, I'm a history professor. And I would like to cite an example that is, that is a very in thing that is creating a buzz. That is the Indus Valley civilization and its discovery of 100 years. I myself is working on a research with a research team that is trying to decode the script of the
Yes.
Indus Valley. Now, so this Indus Valley civilization geographically, which was in undivided India, but now it is part of India, part of Pakistan. Indus Valley seals have been found in Mesopotamia. So,
Yes. Yes.
sir, in this context, whether it is geographically or in culturally, sir, where do we situate this problem? Where, can it come? Can it really come under IKS? Because India cannot claim, you know, complete rights to the to the IVC, Indus Valley Civilization. So how will you situate this? I'm just curious.
Okay. Thank you,
That's
Paramita,
all.
for your.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to quickly so that I can accommodate some more questions. Yeah, Indus Valley civilization question is very interesting. I'm beginning with your last question rather. I'm going one by one. See, when it comes to knowledge, like rivers do not know political boundaries as such. Okay, like the birds do not know which is foreign country, which is native country. They have to fly to the locations. Similarly, when it comes to Indus Valley civilization, it is a kind of a common heritage of the entire South Asia. One. And when we have to understand Indus Valley civilization, we have to understand Indus Valley civilization in terms of not only Indus Valley, also, as we have said, Mesopotamia, Oman, and all these places. Actually, a lot of the names of these Indus Valley individuals were discovered in Mesopotamia,
Yeah,
in the tablet.
they were called the Meluhas. Yeah.
Yes, Meluhas. And even one some romantic stories were also discovered, like someone fellow went there with a merchant young boy, they married there, like that kind of stories. So now, when it comes to Indus Valley civilization, we have to accept the fact that the whole idea of India and Pakistan is a very recent origin. It's very recent. It recently happened. When it comes to Indus Valley civilization, we have to also associate ourselves with the Kalas tribe who are living up north of Pakistan. Okay, from they say that is the kind of that is the geography of the Vedas. Vedas actually, when you get the description of Vedas, you get the description of the places like in Chitwal and all these places. Okay, so now this is the reason why when you expand your knowledge, the political restrictions becomes rather the limiting factors to know yourself. So in that sense, I would say Indus Valley civilization we can claim it's our civilization. Pakistan can also claim as their civilization. So this is a common heirloom. That is one. So history is our own. Okay, when it comes to Pakistan, cannot say that uh, only Pakistanis fought for India's freedom, or we cannot say only we fought. None of the Pakistanis at that time fought for India's freedom. It was not. So this is like the beauty and the paradox of our history of South Asia. That is one.
Good evening,
Second,
sir.
yeah, hi.
Oh, sorry, sir. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, I'm just quickly finishing. Secondly, Surpanaka and how we can give voice to it. This is we the academicians will have to think about whether within this paradigm of ICAS can we open up the text instead of keeping it closed. That's when and when it comes to modernity, yes, within this decolonial framework, modernity is always seen as a continuation of coloniality in certain respect again. Though in many respects we cannot get rid of modernity.
But so when we
Yes.
talk about decoloniality, we are by default bringing in, coloniality and giving a lot of importance to it. So our yardstick of,
Yeah, this is decoloniality essentially can response to coloniality. This is a response to coloniality. It's not a kind of total delinkages, and that is why now at this moment it is objectivist for delinking. Okay, maybe if we can delink, gradually we can arrive at our own geopolitics of knowledge. That is the idea. Okay, so that we can from this local knowledge we can produce.
Thank you
That's all.
so
Thank you.
much.
Good evening,
Parul.
sir.
Parul.
Good evening,
Yes.
I
sir.
hope Arupita. Okay. Can you please make a question a little crisp and precise so that everyone gets the chance and we are running out of time? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I want to raise one question.
Yes, please,
Yeah,
madam.
please.
Namaskar, sir. Very good lecture, sir. Very impressive. And sir,
Thank you.
you you have touched the area of universality. And
Yes.
one question from my answer. My question is the hybridity and assimilation is synonymous, sir?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Hybridity and assimilation. Okay, hybridity and assimilation, they look quite similar, but I would just try to give you answer from the quick thing that coming to my mind, whatever. Hybridity is a kind of admixture. It is a kind of mixing where you also retain your own. That is a kind of hybridity, right? A hybrid identity. But assimilation is almost erasing yourself. Most of the things you erase. So assimilation is more of erasing yourself more than hybridity. When you are hybrid, you still retain yourself, retain your identity. So there would be some kind of subtle differences, though there would be large amount of compromise on both occasions. That's what my understanding. How much, madam? But
Thank
but
you,
uh,
sir.
but I shall
So,
think more on this. I shall try to think more on this hybridity and assimilation. Thank you, madam.
Okay, sir.
so we have a few questions from chat box. I'll quickly read for you. This from Dr. Benjamin Darlong. He says, IKS intend to bring about the paradigm shift in our way of delinking or decolonizing narratives over the years. How far IKS present itself to be the stronghold of the Indian education system? This is the first question. And the second question is, does this trans concept extravaganza not have holes to misinterpretation and misjudgment of the original intent of text? If yes, how do we escape the loophole? You'd like
Okay.
to answer the first part, sir? First,
Okay.
maybe the second one.
Then the way I have understood the questions.
The first
First
question,
one is, yeah, carry on.
Dr. Benjamin, if you're there, could you please come on camera? Maybe you can directly interact. Are you there, Dr. Benjamin?
Okay.
Otherwise, we're going to skip your question. All right. So the first, maybe we'll take the next question because
Maybe he will again
okay.
relink. Yeah. There might be
The
some
next
kind.
question. The next question we have, sir. What are the potential limitations and challenges of using literature as a tool for decolonization and social change? By Nilay, Mr. Nilay.
Yeah. See, every discourse will have its own limitations, and every discourse will have its own potentialities. Literature is one, but one big potentialities of literature is that literature can actually go beyond fixed historicity and beyond fixed political discourses. It can actually very subtly raise questions. That is because it has that freedom, maybe in the form of poetry, in the form of fiction. It can always fictionalize certain realities, and from that count, literature can actually be one of the very significant tool of delinking. And more importantly, whenever it comes to this anti-decolonial movement, we see a lot of people. Most of them are writers belonging to literature through their poetry, through their fiction, through their short stories, through their theater, and also through their painting. They are very actively engaged with this particular uh, movement of decoloniality. Though at the same time, decolonial movement is also a political movement in Latin America, in Bolivia, in Peru, in Ecuador, in all these places. It's a major political movement. It's on the ground. At the same time, this has been very significantly supplemented by the literary outputs. So literature can be a very potential tools of these decolonial exercise or decolonial movement. And that is the reason why in literature, IKS is coming in a significant way. Yes. Yes, Marilyn.
So
Over to
we have the next question.
you. Yeah.
From Ms. Shukla, what texts or reading suggestions can you suggest that could help us in getting an action plan to do decolonial research in India, especially related to law and justice? She's very ready now to take action.
Okay, maybe I'll send some of the books that I know to Merelin over WhatsApp, and from there
Yeah,
on,
I'll share it in the group. I can do that.
I'll do that. I'll send
Sure,
a
sir.
biblio. Yeah. Okay.
Do we have more questions from participants who'd like to come on the camera? We can give maybe 2 3 minutes. Okay, please carry on.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, very
You
much.
are audible.
Yeah. Sir, it was really a very, very insightful lecture. And so I'll just jump to the question. So you were talking about the frigidity of texts. So the context that you mentioned was the Ayurveda and some Indian texts. So many of these texts are also scriptural in nature, which also has a totalitarian kind of a leaning. So how do we navigate that?
Yeah, that is the idea actually. I'm happy that that kind of questions has been raised on this forum. My idea is actually to provoke this kind of questions. See, I guess as I have said, we can understand this as a kind of diachronic element in a sense that I guess that one particular book was written, we know as information. We can know that thing. And that somebody wrote one particular thing in this. Like, for example, when it comes to even science for that matter, we go through long background reading. Who were the first persons who had said this thing about that thing? Okay? And we also get to know that how wrong those people were. And now how we have arrived in the present conclusions. So this is a kind of trajectory of most of the scientific discourses or scientific texts. But ICAS provides a kind of problematics in the sense that ICAS provides this text as a kind of text which we need to follow, but at the same time, we're not supposed to open it up, or we're not supposed to even, problematize. So when it happens, it becomes just an information. It doesn't become a kind of a real knowledge, an active knowledge. We should know that who has written a book, but from there, nothing much follow further if we do not open this particular text. But ICAS has one problematic, it does not encourage opening the text. So this is one problematic. That is why I have raised the question of can we open or can we allow Surpanakha to speak out? Okay. So this is one of the metaphorical propositions we made. Similar thing in also happens in Ayurveda. Like Ayurveda, if Ayurveda has to become like a real dynamic science of health or medicine science, then we have to open up. We cannot be just a faith.
Mm.
Either it should be correct or it should be not correct, but it cannot be a faith. So this is the thing. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, may we read the decolonizing process in through the perspective of cultural studies, sir?
Yes, very much. We can. You can. Because cultural studies is very much a part of this whole decolonial project. And in fact, culture is one of the major tools and weapon, you can say, and methodologies of decoloniality. Like and culture, when I say culture, it can be theater, art, music. These are very much a part of the whole decolonial movement.
No, sir. My question is, sir, from the perspective of cultural study.
I understand that culture because when it comes to culture studies, you bring in, say, your material culture. You bring in, of course, your other kind of art forms. You bring in anthropological elements. So all this also becomes part of this decolonial discourses. It can be done actually. People have been doing it.
Okay, sir.
Have I been clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Are you a teacher or a student of cultural studies?
No, sir.
Okay.
My area is translation, literary theory, and criticism.
Okay, fine. So translation literary criticism is very much a part of decolonial studies, and cultural studies also a part of decolonial studies. In cultural studies, like for example, when it comes to cultural studies, also performing arts is one of the part of cultural studies, which can also be a major tool of decoloniality.